Okay, so we're back for part 3, talking about the body shape of Osteichthyes. So again, lots of different species, over 20,000 species, about 15,000 of those are marine fishes, and they have a variety of body shapes. And this body shape is definitely correlated to their lifestyle. So streamlined or laterally flattened fish, like our tuna, for example, tend to be either constant swimmers or, hunters, active swimmers. Dorsoventrally flattened fish, like the sea moth, or for example, like our some of our sit and wait predators, like rockfish or hawkfish. These guys have dorsoventrally flattened, so they kind of sit and then have energy bursts. And then irregularly shaped fishes, which tend to be a lot of them, seahorses, puffer fishes, etc. These guys have all sorts of different shapes and all sorts of different swimming styles and all sorts of different lifestyles to suit that. Flatfish are found at the bottom. Seahorses just kind of flutter around, algae or coral that they live on. Pufferfish, they are interesting in and of themselves. So just lots of different shapes. What's really cool about fishes is that they can change color, and they do so in a similar way to like our octopus. So they have chromatophores, which are pigmented skin cells, and they can expand and contract these skin cells and allowing them to change color. Not only that, but some of their cells are what we call iridophores. And so these have like iridescent crystals that again expand or contract, and they can reflect light and emit iridescence. And so fishes aren't always the same color day and night. They actually can change color, and that can communicate to other fishes what's happening with them. So it's usually behavioral response. For example, fishes will be one color during the day and a totally different color at night. Sometimes if they're territorial or they're aggressive, they'll change different colors, like as a warning color. Sometimes they'll change colors when they're ready to mate or when they're reproductively mature. And some of them have colors to camouflage. And here's an example of our 3-spot Hawaiian damselfish displaying aggressive coloration versus non-aggressive coloration. So different colors mean different things. So all fishes can change colors, but some fishes have really interesting color patterns, right? So sometimes these bright or striped kind of color patterns can mean warning. Sometimes these cryptic color patterns can be, for camouflaging or blending into the habitat. And sometimes, especially in schooling fish, disruptive coloration can confuse a predator. So schooling is known as a protective response, and also as, more eyes to find food, etc. So lots of fishes, it's hard for a predator to tell, where one fish ends and another begins, etc. So that can confuse predators. And finally, for pelagic fishes that live in open ocean, they have this really cool adaptation called countershading. Countershading prevents predators or prey from being seen. So essentially, countershading is lighter at the bottom and darker at the top. So if a prey is above this predator, it's blending in with the dark bottom of the ocean. But if a prey is below the predator, it blends in with the light reflecting from the top of the ocean. So countershading is a really good strategy to kind of blend into a pelagic habitat. So lots of swimming styles and lots of swimming patterns, and this also affects their physiology of their muscle. So fishes that are kind of constant swimmers, like tuna, for example, will have real dark red meat, and this is because of the presence of what are called a special type of myoglobin, a protein in the muscle that holds onto tissues. And so you can see the myomeres. These are sections of muscle tissue. And they're present in both, kind of red meat fish and lighter meat fish. And these muscle kind of bands or segments can contract. They're kind of, even though they're separated by connective tissue, they can contract rhythmically so that there's kind of an energy saving mechanism to swimming. And this is important, especially because muscles use a lot of energy, and fish can be up to 75% muscle tissue. Compare that with the average human that's like 40 to 50% muscles. Fin function is also very important. So let's go over the different fins and how they help the fish. So the tail fin is usually, it's called the caudal fin. And so this is what provides thrust, or the main kind of swimming like power to the fish. So it'll be forked for fast swimmers like a tuna. So this is forked, or rounded for quick getaways. Like a lot of reef fish have rounded caudal fins. The anal fins are on the ventral side, just anterior of the caudal fin, and the anal fins, which are paired, are used for stability. The pelvic fin controls pitch, so it controls how the fish kind of rotates from side to side. The pec fins are made for maneuverability, although some fishes use pec fins for swimming, notably the parrotfish. They swim a lot using their pec fins. It kind of looks like they're flying in the ocean when you watch them swim. Their pec fins can also be used for braking and turning. And finally, the dorsal fin, the fin on their backs, this is for balance and stability. So swimming styles vary with all these different fishes, and these are links to videos showing how these fish swim, and I'll post this in the extra videos section as well. But you'll notice how parrotfish swim with their pec fins. Butterfly fish, which are reef fish, can quickly maneuver through the reef, and they have that rounded caudal fin. Pufferfish are weird, irregular swimmers that mainly propel themselves with their with a very posterior located dorsal fin and their anal fins. And then tuna have very streamlined fins, and mostly when they're swimming, the only fin you see is their caudal fin, pushing them for fast propulsion through the water. Fish also have a variety of feeding styles because they eat so many different things. So we have our predators, our carnivorous fishes that eat other fishes and inverts. We've got herbivores that graze on algae, filter feeders that kind of pick or collect plankton out of the water or just filter them through their gills. We've got bottom feeders that scavenge for detritus, so their mouth might tend to be a little more pointed down. Think of like a goatfish, for example. And then we've got tons of specialists, so planktonivores that pick out plankton, corallivores that eat coral, spongivores that are specialized for eating sponges. And so here's some of those mouths and how they're adapted to these different feeding styles. So you can see big mouth, lots of teeth for our carnivore barracuda, a long kind of little picky beak for our long-billed six-spined butterfly fish. They pick little coral polyps out of the coral colonies. Big mouth and gills for plankton filter feeders. Scraping teeth for coral grazers like our parrotfish, and then finally plankton pickers like our slip mouth. So you can see they can pick little shrimps out of the water column. Fishes have hearts and they have a closed circulatory system like us. But what's different about it is instead of 4 valves, they only have 2. So they just have 1 atrium and 1 ventricle. So the ventricle is what pumps the blood, and the atrium collects the blood from the rest of the body. The gas exchange, as you might have known already, occurs through their gills. And because it's so hard to extract oxygen from water, the gills have lots of surface area. So they're very filamentous, and there's lots of blood vessels running through their gills. They call them gill capillaries here. While most sharks must swim continuously, fishes are actually able to ventilate their gills by moving their jaws. So you can see here, their mouth opens, water fills in, and then they close their mouth and they push that water through their gills. So they open their operculum. So that's how they inhale and exhale. So a little different than us, right? And then their gills, which have tons of capillaries, extract the oxygen out of the water. And just to look at that in a different way, this is kind of an animated diagram showing all the different parts of their gills. So here's their gill filaments. That's where all the gas exchange occurs. And here's the gill arch. This is a bony structure that holds the gills. And then the gill rakers. The gill rakers are important because if they, take up sand or take up something that's not meant to go through their gills, it can damage these delicate gill filaments. So the gill rakers are kind of like filters that catch debris from damaging the gills. And so you can kind of see all of those parts right here in a living or a recently caught fish. So again, I'm just showing you the picture of those muscles. So this is a tuna steak, and as you guys know, tuna are highly migratory pelagic species. They're constantly swimming. So their flesh is red because they have lots of myoglobin, which is a protein related to hemoglobin, and it holds oxygen in the muscle so that they can maintain those continual rhythmic contractions. Contrast that with the white flesh of a halibut, which is a bottom feeder. They sit on the bottom and, they move occasionally, but not very much. They can have short bursts of swimming, but they're not constant swimmers like the tuna. And so this is the difference between why the fish colors, the tissue colors are different. And as you guys might remember, marine fishes live in a hypertonic environment. So the solute concentration of the seawater is much higher than the solute concentration of their bodies. And so technically, they're always losing water to their environment. So the way that they manage this water loss is by constantly drinking salt water. And they have these specialized, what are called chloride cells in their gills that filter out salt. So chloride and then sodium goes with it. And then they also concentrate salt in their kidneys and excrete just a little bit of really highly concentrated urine that's got a lot of salt ions. And so that's how they maintain their water balance in their bodies, is they drink lots of salt water, filter out the salt, and excrete that salt either from the chloride cells in their gills or through their kidneys. So they're always drinking to reduce and retain water. And they also have little nostrils, so they have a really well-developed smell. And that's important because there's lots of chemicals in the water that they need to, detect. And this helps them detect food, migratory paths, spawning grounds, etc. And so here's fish nostrils, which are really cute. And then they also have taste buds too. And the taste buds aren't just on their in their mouth or on their tongue, but they're also around their lips as well. And finally, they have really cool eyes. So they're different than ours. So fish eyes have a big kind of concentrated lens in the middle. It's like a big gelatinous ball. And unlike our lens, which is flat and we kind of change the shape of the lens to see far and near, what they do is they move the position of this big round ball-like lens back and forth in order to focus near or far. And they have a lateral line system just like the sharks do. And so I'll explain what that is. So again, the lateral line system runs on either side of their body, and it detects vibrations in the water. And it does so in a very similar way to how hearing works. So while the lateral line detects vibrations and pressure changes, hearing actually detects sound waves, right? And is also for equilibrium and balance. The lateral line, as you can see, goes along the side of their body and sometimes around their head region. And if you look in the lateral line, you'll see water enters, and there's these little hair cells right here, close up. And these hair cells will move and send little signals to a nerve, which will get processed in their brain, and that'll help them detect pressure movements, like if another fish is swimming near them or they're swimming, near a reef. And it helps them kind of orient themselves in the water. And we'll go on to our last part with fish behaviors and reproduction in the last part 4.